everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make these cute candy corns. They can be a washcloth, hot pad, or pot holder, and you can even put two of them together and make a cute little stuffy. And I'm going to show you how to do all of that on today's video. It measures about 11 inches tall and about 9 inches at the widest point. So it's a nice size. You can even make a bunch of these up and hang them around for decoration. Now you can find this free crochet pattern on my blog. And as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To make a candy corn washcloth, hot pad, pot holder, or stuffy, you're going to, of course, need some yarn. Now, I made these out of Red Heart Super Saver that I had on hand. Just your basic orange, white, yellow, and a little bit of black for the eyes and smile. If you're going to be making these as hot pads and you're going to put something hot on them, I really recommend that you use cotton yarn or something that's a blend that's not going to burn. All right? But because I'm just making them for decoration and I'm also going to make a stuffy, I'm going to use Red Heart Super Saver. And of course, I would like for your yarns to be a medium number 4, whether it's cotton or whatever fiber that you choose to use. If you're going to make a stuffy, you'll need a little bit of stuffing, and I've got that right here. That's just polyester fiber fill that you can buy in those bags, and it just takes a handful, depending on how much stuffing, if you're going to make a stuffy. If you're making hot pads and pot holders, of course, you don't need any stuffing. We're going to be stitching today with our H, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle for weaving in ends, and if you're going to add a face. And then, of course, you'll need some scissors. We'll be starting up here at the point of our candy corn, and we'll be increasing, changing colors with the orange and the yellow as we go down. So we'll begin down here at the point, or the top of our candy corn. So we're going to begin with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 4 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to stitch 5 double crochets in this 4th chain from the hook. So yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet, and then we stitched 5 more, so we have 6 double crochets. We're going to chain 3 and turn. We're going to increase by 1 at the beginning and 1 at the end of our row. So we're going to stitch a double crochet in this first stitch. Our chain 3 counted as our first, and then we stitched a double crochet in that same stitch. Now we're going to double crochet in the next 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in this last stitch, which was our chain 3, we're going to stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. We'll go ahead and chain 3. And so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we increased, we had 6, we increased at the beginning of the row and at the end of the row. And we're going to do that again. We chained 3 and turn. So we'll stitch a double crochet in the same stitch as that chain 3. So that's an increase by 1. Then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets across till we reach that last double crochet. And that last double crochet is that chain 3 from that previous row, and we'll stitch 2 double crochets. That was a little snug. It happens. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and make our chain 3, and you can see how it's increasing. Of course, I'm holding it upside down because this is actually the top. So we had 6, 8, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so every row we're increasing by 2, one at the beginning and one at the end. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat this with the white for 2 more rows. All right, so our chain 3 counts as our first. We'll double crochet in that first stitch. We'll double crochet in each stitch across. Here's my last one before I reach the last stitch. And when I reach this last stitch, I'm going to stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. There we go. And go ahead and chain 3. So we went from 6 to 8 to 10 and now 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we'll repeat that one more time and we'll have 14 stitches on the next row. So I repeated that row, increasing by 1 at the beginning and end of each row. So we went from 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 double crochets. Now at the end of row 5, we're going to cut our yarn and we're going to change to our orange yarn. We want to change before we do the chain 3, or you end up with one stitch that's white where we want it to be orange. Alrighty, so 1, 2, 3. There's my chain 3. And I'm going to do that little snug down that I do. It's just a little, it's not even a knot really. It's just a little thing there, and that just holds it until we come back and weave that in. All right, now you can stitch over that if you want to, and I usually do a couple of stitches. So we're going to go ahead and increase by stitching 1 double crochet in that first stitch with the orange, and then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in each of the stitches across. And you can see I stitched over that yarn. I'm going to put it to the back, that way I can come back and weave that in. And I'll continue stitching 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets across until I reach that last double crochet, and then we'll stitch 2 in the last stitch. And on this row we're going to have 16 double crochets because again we're increasing by 2 double crochets each row, 1 at the beginning and 1 at the end of each row. So here I'm at the last stitch, which is that chain 3, and I'll stitch 2 double crochets and chain 3. Let's turn it this way. This is the back where I stitched over my yarn. That's the beginning tail there. We'll turn it over, and you can see the triangle of the candy corn shaping. And on this row we have 16 double crochets. All right, so we've chained 3. We're going to stitch 1 double crochet in that same stitch as our chain 3, and then 1 double crochet in each stitch across. And then again we're going to, whoops, there we go. And then again we're going to stitch 2 double crochets in that last stitch. I've stitched across, stitching 1 double crochet in each double crochet across till I reach that last stitch, and then I'm going to stitch 2 double crochets in that last stitch and chain 3. And I think by now you have figured out how the pattern works for our candy corn. You're going to increase by 1 at the beginning and at the end of every row. And so what I want you to do is to repeat this for 4 more rows. So you'll repeat 4 more times, 2 double crochets at the beginning, 1 in each across, 2 double crochets at the end, chain 3, and turn. But at the end of your 4th repeat, don't chain 3 because we're going to change to our yellow yarn. So just to repeat, we're going to repeat what we've been doing 4 more times. I've repeated 4 more times, increasing at the beginning and end of each row with double crochets in between. This brings us to row 11, and at row 11 you'll have 26 double crochets. We're not going to chain 3 because we're changing colors. So I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to bring in my yellow. And then I'm going to chain 3. Before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and do that little, I call it a stay knot. I don't really know if it has a name, but it just keeps it from coming undone and stays nice and tidy. We've chained 3 and turn. And again, we're going to stitch a double crochet in that first stitch because we're increasing again at the beginning and end of each row. Now we're going to stitch a double crochet in each stitch across. And again, I'm stitching over those tails of yarn for a couple of stitches. And it just makes it easier to weave that in later. All right, so I'm just going to continue across, stitching 1 double crochet in each of those double crochets across. And then when I get to the end, I'm again going to stitch 2 double crochets in that last stitch. I increased by 1 at the beginning. I stitched 1 double crochet in each stitch across, and I increased by 1 at the end of this row, so we have 28 double crochets. Now we're going to repeat this with the yellow 2 more rows. So we'll increase at the beginning and end of both of the next 2 rows, and that will give us 3 rows of the yellow. So we're going to repeat for 2 more rows. I repeated those last 2 rows, increasing at the end and beginning of each row. And at this row, which is row 14, you should have 32 double crochets across. Now, I chose to do the trim in orange. If you're making a hot pad or pot holder decoration or washcloth, we're just going to do an even row of single crochets in orange. You can do your outside trim in any color that you want. And I'm going to show you this first, and then I'm going to show you how to make it into a stuffie if you want to. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to join in our orange because that's the color I chose to do my trim. All right, we'll pull those out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to place a single crochet in each of the double crochets across, and then we'll single crochet up. I'll show you how to make that little loop for hanging, and then we'll single crochet back down. All right, so this part of it is super easy. We're just going to stitch a single crochet in each of the double crochets across the bottom of our candy corn. I've stitched those single crochets across the bottom of my candy corn, and I'm to this first corner. We're going to stitch 3 single crochets in that corner, and that's going to make it just move around there nice and smoothly. And now we're going to stitch up the side. And the best way to get a nice even look is to try to stitch in the stitches themselves and not these holes. Go through the sides of the stitches at the ends of the rows, and sometimes like that you might get in between a string. That's okay. And you're just going to have to try to eyeball it and try your best not to put your stitches too close together and not too far apart. There is not a set number of stitches you need to have. You just need to make sure that they're even and lay nicely. And just take your time. Don't pull your stitches too tight. Don't pull them too loose. Just relax and move across until you reach that top. Up here, and then I'm going to show you how to add that loop. So I've worked my way up the side and I'm to the top. I've got my one stitch in right at the top. I'm going to chain 10 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. And now I'm just going to single crochet in that same spot and then continue single crocheting down the opposite side. That one's a little bit far apart. Let's see if we can get that just a little bit closer. There we go. And that's what I mean by eyeballing it. You have to just look at it and see if your stitches are too close together. There's our loop. All right. And we'll just continue working down this side till we reach back to that first single crochet where we started. It's just a nice even row on both sides, working back down here, and we'll join back to that single crochet where we started across. I completed that side stitching single crochets. I'm going to join to that first single crochet, cut my yarn, then I'll go in the next stitch and pull that loop to the back. That way we have a nice looking edge. And then of course I have some weaving in to do. I've already weaved in my other ones, and I just need to use my needle and weave these ends in. And then I'm going to show you how to add the little eyes and the smile. The eyes are made in black, and so is the smile. And I'm going to show you how to make the eye, but I'm going to use this white yarn because black is really difficult to see on film. All right, so what you're going to do with your black yarn, even though I'm using white, unless you want white or yellow, you can use whatever colors you want for your eyes and your smile. All right, we're going to chain 2, and then in that second chain from the hook, we're going to stitch 7 single crochets. So we'll go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll join to that first single crochet, and we'll cut the yarn, and we'll leave a long tail, and we'll use this long tail for sewing it on. All right, so let's go ahead and tie that off. And sometimes when you use this method, you end up with a hole in the center. All right, and so all you do is you take that beginning tail of yarn, you thread it on your needle, and we're going to close that hole right up. We'll just go around like this. And close that right up. Tie that off. And now your eye is ready to be sewn on to your candy corn. I have already sewn one on, and I'm going to show you how to sew them on. I'm placing mine just next to each other. You can do them farther apart. You can do them cockeyed, however you want them to be. I just like them right there in the center. I place it on, hold it, and then I just go underneath and start stitching around that outer edge of the stitches. I think it makes the less mess in the back, because if this is a pot holder or a washcloth and you do want the face on there, you want the least amount of mess in the back of your washcloth. You can try to work into the tops of the stitches if you want to, but I like to kind of push them in and make them a little bit 3D as well. And you can see on the back you are going to get a little bit of a mess, but not too bad. All right. And of course, if you're making this for a stuffy, that doesn't even matter at all, because that's going to be on the inside of the stuffy. All right, so once you're happy that your eye is going to stay put, we're just going to go ahead and weave that into the back. I like to kind of go through a couple of stitches and go through the center of the back of the eye. I think that just makes it stay put. I want it to stay put. All right, so I've done that a few times. We're going to go ahead and click that. And now I'm going to show you how to add that quirky little smile. Now you can have a big smile, a small smile, however smile that you want. I like the little crooked one, and so I'm going to kind of go under the eye. And when you're doing embroidery, remember, go through a stitch, not a hole, because if you go through in between the stitches, you're just going to lose the stitches that we're adding. All right, so I'm going to pull this through. I'm going to leave a little tail, and I'm making the side of the mouth. So I'm going to come down here and go through a stitch as well. And then I'll go through the center. Okay. And now I'm just going to kind of have a little fun and make a quirky little smile. I'm going through stitches. And this is just what I call the initial stitches, because I'm going to go back over it and double it. All right. I like that. I think it looks cute. So I'm just going to go back over it and just double up those stitches. And this makes the smile thicker. It also brings me back to where I started, where I can weave these ends in together. I'm going to bring the edge of that smile up just a little bit more so it reaches like that. See, I want it just a little higher because I want it to reach this edge of the smile. All right, so there is my quirky little smile. I think it's fun, but of course you can make a big smile however you want to do it. All right, so this brings me back here. I'm going to make that little stay knot that I like to make. I don't know why, I just think it helps it stay better. That's why I call it a stay knot. And I'm going to work this in, but I'm going to try to stay on the backs of the stitches so it doesn't show through. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do what's called a crochet no-no and make a couple of knots. There we go. But you can keep weaving that in if you want to. So there is our candy corn with a cute little face. You can make it with a face, or you can do it this way and leave the face off. But now I want to show you how you can take this and make this into an adorable little stuffy. To make it into a stuffy, it's really super easy. You need a front and a back. You put the two together. All right. We're going to start at the bottom with our H hook and our matching yarn, and we're just going to slip stitch them together. I'm going to start about this far back and go in those stitches that we added with the single crochet. And we're not going to slip stitch them together. We're going to single crochet them together. I said slip stitch, I meant single crochet. All right, so we're just going to place a single crochet in each stitch around, stitching the front to the back. Now, on the sides, your stitches may not always line up, all right? So don't worry about that too much. Just make sure you don't have any gaping holes. So we'll just single crochet all the way up the side making sure there isn't any holes in the side and stitching it all together, stitching the front to the back, moving all the way up to the top where we have our 2 little loops. Now, if you know ahead of time you're going to make a stuffie, you can leave one of them without the loop if you want to. I just leave them both on there because I think they're fun, and you can loop them together, and it doesn't matter if there's 2 loops. But if that bothers you, leave the loop off the front or the back and just single crochet across it, and then you only have 1 loop when we move around there. All right, so I am going to continue to stitch all the way up here to the loop. I'll show you what to do here, and then we'll stitch all the way back down here. We'll stuff it and close it up. I've stitched all the way up the side, stitching the front to the back. I'm up here where the loops are, and what I do is I stitch right in that stitch where those loops are. I'm going to push those loops to the back, and then I'm going to stitch right in that stitch right next to it. So here's the front, and here's the back. Push those loops up and stitch that single crochet. And I always pull that one nice and tight, and then I can just start working down the side. So there's my loops. I don't have any hole there. It's all stitched nice and tight. And I'll just continue working down the side of my candy corn. Another thing that you can do there is add that loop after, or not add the loops at all. So that's another option with our candy corn. I like the loops. I think they're fun. All right, so I'm just going to continue stitching down this side, making sure everything's lined up. And I'll stitch over to about right here, and then we'll give our little candy corn some stuffing. I've stitched all the way to about right here. Now I'm going to take some stuffing and stuff my little candy corn. Make sure I get it in the corners so he has good shape. And see, it just took about a handful of stuffing, not very much. And now I'm just going to close it up across the bottom with those single crochet stitches. I've stitched across the bottom, closing up my candy corn. Now I'll join to that first single crochet. Cut that off. Go in the next stitch, pull the loop to the back. And now all I have to do is weave those ends in, and I've got an adorable piece of candy corn. So whether you're making a washcloth, a hot pad pot holder, or maybe a stuffie from this pattern, there's something here for everyone. Decorate for Halloween and have lots of fun.